Good evening. I'm Haylee Ficuciello, and this is your Englebrook Independent News Federal Crime Report, bringing you the latest federal prosecutions from courtrooms across the Southeast United States. Tonight, violent carjackings, fentanyl trafficking networks, financial fraud schemes, child exploitation cases, and major federal sentences handed down from across 10 districts. We begin tonight in Maryland. Ron Waldrod, convicted in an armed gas station carjacking involving a Glock with a 30-round magazine, apprehended after foot chase and aerial surveillance. Nicholas Parks pled guilty to laundering $329,000 tied to cross-country marijuana trafficking networks. Reginald Dargan sentenced to 3 years after being caught with a ghost gun while on federal supervised release. A clear pattern, a repeat offender, illegal firearms, and organized operations moving across state lines. A major fentanyl trafficking operation has been dismantled in West Virginia, Eastern Panhandle. 45-year-old Delando Butler admitted to leading a six-person drug ring responsible for distributing over 400 grams of fentanyl, equivalent to roughly 200,000 lethal doses, along with methamphetamine and cocaine. Authorities also seized 9 firearms, including rifles and pistols tied to the operation. Butler faces up to 24 years in federal prison. Additional cases include Courtney Stewart, sentenced to 36 months for fentanyl and meth distribution. Crystal Lewis, sentenced to 40 months tied to Butler's network. Investigators recovered tens of thousands of fentanyl pills and 14 firearms. In another case, Kelly Reen Miller pled guilty after stealing identities and laundering funds across bank accounts, totaling funds estimated between $500,000 and $1.5 million. In a drug crackdown, Tina Dixon sentenced to 5 years and 10 months after fentanyl and crack cocaine found during a search. Darnell McCarver, 19, sentenced to 12 years, coordinated drug sales from Detroit into West Virginia. In a federal gun crime, Brandon Robertson pled guilty to possession of 5 firearms, 4 of which were stolen during a pawn shop burglary. Sentencing is pending. In Virginia, a federal court ordered lobbying an Islam and associate to pay over $408,000 for fraudulently obtaining Paycheck Protection Program loans using falsified documents. In another case, Trevante Hunter, sentenced to nearly 4 years after fleeing police with a loaded handgun and extended magazine. In a disturbing case, Yamir Halmet, sentenced to 20 years for coercing minors and distributing child sexual abuse material. Authorities recovered hundreds of files across multiple devices. Brian Lamont Turner, sentenced to 8 years for running a multi-state prostitution operation involving vulnerable victims struggling with addiction. Also, federal officials warned a scam call impersonation of U.S. attorney offices demanding payments under these threats. In Tennessee, Stephen McCurd, convicted of distributing heroin and carfentanil, resulting in a fatal overdose. He faces 20 years to life in prison. Michael Wilson received 22 plus years for meth trafficking and firearm offenses. Kenneth Lee, sentenced to 99 months, ordered to pay $7 million in restitution after running a fraudulent legal state settlement scheme. Regan Parter pled guilty to arson using a Napapan-based device, destroying a nonprofit building and causing over $1.2 million in damages, while also attempting to provide support to foreign terrorist organizations. In North Carolina, Ahmad Talley, sentenced to over 10 years, linked to a fatal overdose investigation. Drugs were packaged in disturbing labels like life support. Jeremy Hilton received 12 years after selling fentanyl and a firearm, followed by a high-speed police chase. 2 traffickers sentenced to 10 plus years each after distributing kilogram quantities of methamphetamine across Asheville. In South Carolina, Larry Gunnan sentenced to 15 years for marijuana trafficking and gun possession. Hannan City Councilman Kevin Hedgepeth charged with production and possession of child sexual abuse materials, allegedly paying minors online. A Chinese national serviceman, Huan Li, indicted for attempted to obstruct a federal investigation and communication with foreign nationals seeking sensitive information. In Georgia, a former COO, Brady Lum, accused of embezzling over $600,000 through fraudulent invoices and misuse of funds. 3 men have been sentenced for illegal gun possession, 1 receiving 10 years after a car theft incident. Mira Stalling pled guilty after submitting $650,000 in fraudulent insurance claims and misusing federal COVID relief funds. In Alabama, Tossing Moore sentenced to over 17 years after selling meth and transporting more than a kilogram of fentanyl. In Mississippi, Elmer Smith sentenced to 14 years for abducting and assaulting a domestic partner across state lines. And finally, in Florida, two defendants sentenced to a combined 46 plus years after murdering a man over a missing methamphetamine shipment. A 16-year-old indicted as an adult for killing his stepsister aboard a cruise ship, facing life in prison if convicted. ADT ordered to pay $1.3 million for illegally charging military members in a violation of federal protection. A nursing assistant sentenced to 9 years for a $11.4 million fraud scheme involving unnecessary medical devices. Multiple defendants charged and sentenced in federal child exploitation investigation involving online solicitation and distribution networks. From violent crimes to complex financial fraud and large-scale drug trafficking operations, federal prosecutors across the Southeast continue to pursue cases that span state lines and impact communities nationwide. As always, all defendants are presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty in the court of law. I'm Haylee Ficuciello, and this is Englebrook Independent News Federal Crime Report. Stay informed, stay vigilant. Good night.